What do you mean there's no Penn State football game this weekend? Well, we're still doing the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. It is Friday. There's still college football, so there's still Ryan Snyder's Best Bets. That's coming up, plus a recruiting update here on the Daily. We'll get to it, get you to your weekend as quickly as we possibly can. BWI Daily Edition. We're not rushing. That's not what I meant there, but just that it's Friday. You want to enjoy your weekend. We want to help you enjoy your weekend. So we are going to have a good show today and discuss the things that can put a little extra change in your pocket and give you some insight into what's going on with Penn State football recruiting. Ryan Snyder, he does all of that for us here on the Friday Daily Edition. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm always permanently in a rush, T. Frank. So yes, we are rushing. That is my life. My wife would tell you that I am the most impatient person in the world because I am the most impatient person in the world. But yes, I'm doing good. We are off to DC tonight to watch a little lineman versus lineman. I don't know, that sounded odd. But yeah, we're going to watch Birchmeier and Anthony Donkoh go at it tonight. I'm hoping to get them actually squaring off on each other, right? Because Donko's playing pretty well as a defensive lineman. Of course, Birch plays D-line too. So just excited to hopefully see those guys go at it a little bit. Broad Run, man, they were in the state championship last year. They're 1-4 this year. They have a lot of younger guys on the team. So just kind of curious to see what they look like. Light Ridge, this is where Donkoh goes to school.
Yeah.
Light Ridge has only been a school for I think 3 or 4 years now. It's really a new school. They're 3-2 on the year, and just steadily projecting upwards, I guess is the best way to put it. So just excited to see these two teams. I haven't been down to Virginia for a high school game in I think a year or two. So looking forward to getting down there. We're hitting the road after this.
Yeah, and check out the BWI YouTube channel next week when Ryan gets all those highlights up, because those are going to be some fun ones to watch. Get a good sense of where both players are in their progression. And I know Anthony Donkoh and how he's playing is a huge piece of how all the pieces fit for the Penn State class of 2023 offensive line. So I'm very excited to see what you find out tonight. But this week is despite the fact that there's not as much going on this weekend because it's Penn State bye week, and I have very little to contribute when there isn't a football game going on. So you're going to be the star of the show telling us where coaches are going on the bye week recruiting visits, and of course, when we get to best bets. So what are the main headlines from this week with Penn State coaches traveling to various schools to see different players?
So a couple things I think to know. Obviously, today's Friday, of course. This is the busiest day. A handful of coaches went out Thursday. Handful will be out Saturday. Everybody's out Friday. Of course, there's high school games mainly on Friday, so it makes sense. James Franklin is out all 3 days. We'll start with him on Thursday. Yesterday, he went and saw Noah Rogers, one of Ohio State's top committed players. Do I think a lot's going to come from that? No, I don't. But he's an incredibly talented player. Penn State has to continue chipping away. You never know. You might get a visit late in the process. So that's notable. Matthias Barnwell, Carmelo Taylor, a couple other players. They're both in Virginia area that they saw yesterday. Noah Rogers is from Raleigh area. They also checked out on Kaveion Keys yesterday as well. He was with, I believe, Taylor Stubblefield for that visit. And all these visits, I should have said. Kaveion, of course, committed to North Carolina, had Penn State pretty much top 2, ends up at UNC. They're going to just keep chipping away at that one too. They like Kaveion a lot. And do I see a whole lot coming from it? No, I really don't. Auburn and Texas A&M have since offered. I kind of get the impression that if he's going to go visit a school right now, Texas A&M makes the most sense as far as, if he's going to get away from UNC and check out another school. But he's also taken his official visit to Penn State already too. I think that's important to note. He would have to come up for an unofficial visit. But a couple others on Thursday. I mean, John Scott was up in St. Thomas More, who we'll talk about here in a little bit more. See Zion Tracy, see Joseph Mapui. Mapui's an interesting 2023 defensive end target. I think Penn State's going to continue watching his progress in film, but I do believe there's a real chance that he could potentially be a take for them down the road. They really like his progress, everything. He's always been good academically, but he's had to improve with credits and things like that because he's originally from Africa. So there's never been like an issue academic wise as far as GPA and things like that. He just has to keep gathering credits.
Right.
So that's why. And so St. Thomas More is a place where you can be a postgraduate. He is technically a senior too. I think that's important to note. He had to leave Archbishop Carroll, I believe, because of his age. I think he's maybe 19 or so now, which I think that was the main reason he had to leave Archbishop Carroll, which is out in the DC area. But anyway, Scott checked up on those two. He was also down in Atlanta. Heaven Brown Schuler is a really good 2024 defensive lineman he checked up on. And then he also went to Alabama last night to see TJ Parker's game. Now, I don't believe TJ Parker played last night, but you still kind of got to show your face, keep chipping away there.
Yeah.
2023 wide receiver Carmelo English is one of the players on his team as well. So John Scott was really literally up and down the entire Eastern Seaboard yesterday, from Connecticut to Atlanta, then over to Alabama. I believe it's Birmingham area is where he ended up there. So some interesting visits there. Troutline stopped in to see Birchmeier and Donkoh yesterday. He won't be at the game tonight. So a couple things I'll mention with Birchmeier and Donkoh. Penn State saw them earlier in the year, and you're only allowed to see them once during this period. But there is a way to get around that. And the reason he's able to see them again is because they've already paid and been accepted into Penn State. Once you pay and you're accepted, contact is, I don't know if unlimited is the right word, because I don't know if there's any details I'm not missing, but calls can happen freely. And, the fact that he was able to do an in-home with them, I believe it's pretty much unlimited contact once that happens. So Penn State fans don't really have anything to worry about with Birchmeier or Donkoh. And Jackson Smolik is the other player. Yeah, right. But Jackson Smolik's the other one who's paid and accepted already.
Wow.
Going to see him tomorrow in Iowa. They're going to do an in-home visit with his family. But those are some of the key visits on Thursday. I'm trying to think, who am I missing? Snyder's down in South Florida. He'll be there Thursday, Friday. He'll come back then Saturday. And Ty Howe is in the DMV area to check up on a bunch of prospects. I know he was at McDonough yesterday. Jeff Exner is a good 2025 prospect there. I think he stopped at Archbishop Spalding, to check up on 2025 Malik Washington. Both of those players have visited Penn State already. He also made a stop at Good Counsel. Good Counsel has a ton of players, from Aaron Childs to Fahim Delane to Kyle Altuner, a bunch of guys that Penn State's offered. So busy Thursday. I don't know if you just want me to keep talking and rolling into Friday. I feel like I should let you into something.
Let me ask you this question. What is the feedback typically because you've done a bunch of these, of following the coaches and knowing where they are and who they're going to, and what's the impact of these visits on the bye week and being able to get out and see people face to face? How, I know is it more of a cumulative thing, or do these mean a little bit more knowing it's during the season and all that stuff?
So it's really those December visits where you get to do in-homes with all the parents, and you get to pull guys out of class and actually have substantial talks while they're in school. I still say those mean more. In recruiting, it's just consistency, right? Everything in recruiting these days is about consistently texting, consistently calling, and consistently showing your face every chance you get to show your face. I mean, for example, Jeff Exner and Malik Washington, 2 2025 guys, right? I mean, there's a long way to go until there. But you got to just be consistent. You got to start at some point, and clearly those are two guys that are going to be important to them. It's all about consistency. So they're going to do it again in December. They'll do it again when they can get out for the spring evaluation period next year, and then you start the cycle all over again next fall. So I think just consistency is the main thing. When they do these visits, you can have a bump. So, if you run into the player, you can, talk casually for maybe a minute or so, but that's really all it's allowed during these during these visits. They are allowed to have extensive talks with the coaches, and that's kind of the main thing here. They're stopping in, talking to coaches, talking to guidance counselors, whoever it may be. But it's really about showing your face and making sure the players know not only you're here, but that they're also very wanted.
It's always interesting. The importance is always at an 11, but each individual thing, it seems like it's a very cumulative process, like you said, just consistency and showing up and making sure that guys feel valued and wanted. But during a week like this, and you're going to see so many players, it's amazing the amount of coordination and time that goes into seeing a guy and giving him a fist bump in a high school hallway. So for Friday, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing I'll say too is, there's been a lot of talk about increased budgets and all the little things that Franklin's trying to get done, especially with this last contract. One thing I've learned from digging over here is that more private flights are happening for the assistants, which is just good to see. Because if you're comparing them to so many other schools out there, a lot of those SEC schools, the Ohio States and all that, don't get me wrong. I mean, many of their assistants are still taking public flights, but when you have to get from point B to point A to point B, and there's no real direct way to do it, sometimes you're not able to. We've seen over the years where Penn State basically really wants to go see a certain kid, but the timing just doesn't work out because of commercial flights, and you got to be here, and you only have so much time to get there. So we're seeing. My point with all this is we're seeing more private flights for the assistants, and it's important because of it just shows recruiting budget's been upped, and they're trying to find ways to just be aggressive like all the other schools that are pouring massive money into this.
And with flight problems that everyone has right now, if you're not taking care of some of those variables, even the plans that you are making that are conservative might fall through because of that. So another interesting wrinkle in recruiting that people don't normally think about. That's why you get paid the medium bucks, Ryan. What about Friday?
All right. So one visit I didn't hit on for yesterday too is that after Franklin did some of his other stops, he flew to Savannah to see Luke Kromenhoek, I believe it's Luke Kromenhoek. He's a 2024 quarterback committed to Florida State. Fans may have seen some tweets last night that he was on those sidelines. So Luke, I'll have to dig more on Luke. I haven't dug too much on him, until I learned about obviously this visit the last couple of days. But could be a player to watch. Like I said, of course he's committed to Florida State, but Franklin isn't stopping at that visit if there's not some kind of discussion or something else going on behind the scenes. So just something to keep an eye out there. As far as his other visits for today, we know he was at Chaminade Madonna. There we go. That school again to see Edwin Joseph this morning. Hearing good things with Joseph, guys. I still need to keep continuing to dig on, is he a take for Penn State this second? Do they want to see what happens with other positions? We know they really like the player, but when you only have a couple scholarships, that's kind of the math that I think we have to figure out here. But I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel pretty confident saying that Joseph is leaning towards Penn State. That there was a lot of talk about Miami after that offer, but I think this official visit has put Penn State in a very good position. The only reason I haven't put it in RPM yet is just is he absolutely a take, or is this a situation where they got to get a couple other positions and then figure out, can we take another wide receiver at some point? So just something to keep an eye on there. But I feel good about Edwin Joseph and his thoughts about Penn State. So let's see where that goes. We know they're also going to be at St. Thomas Aquinas in Dillard today. Of course, Aquinas has King Mack, Conrad Hussey, and Dillard has 2023 running back target Chris Johnson. Sean and I talked about him on the last podcast last week. I mean, we feel pretty confident in saying he is Jaywan Snyder's top target right now as far as getting another running back in this class, which, T. Frank, we've been talking about a good bit. Now that Devin Ford is out, it's incredibly, incredibly important. Like now I feel like they really have to get another running back in this class because you don't know what happened maybe with Kevon Lee after the season. Katron and Nick will be here, but will Kevon Lee have a reason to look around depending on how the rest of the season goes? So something to keep an eye on there. Couple other guys. Yurchich is going to check out Jaden Davis tonight, 2024 quarterback. And I mean, the fact that he's going to see Davis tonight kind of tells me that Davis is their top guy, which isn't a massive surprise. I mean, we've pretty much have said Davis is their top guy. I just don't know if he's the most realistic guy for them. I still feel like Jaden Bradford is more realistic for Penn State. Davis has just every school you can think of out there. A lot of people have felt that he's leaning to Michigan. We'll see. But Yurchich obviously doesn't get out very much. The coordinators don't go out very often as it is. The rest of the assistants do more of the traveling. So the fact that that's his first stop in this evaluation period for the fall, it just tells me that clearly I think Davis is their top guy, which shouldn't be much of a surprise. Terry Smith is in the Tampa region today. He was originally planning to see Elliott Washington play tonight. Of course, Venice High School, near Venice Beach there. But their game's been canceled. Of course, the hurricane came through there last week. So I think a lot of the games in that area have been canceled, but he is still in the area. I know he stopped at Berkeley Prep. That's where Keon Keeley is, a top 2023 5-star. Haven't seen a lot of traction there, but Penn State's got to chip away at him. Carrollwood Day is another top school in that area. They have about 4 or 5 2024 guys that Penn State has offered. And I know he also stopped by Wharton too. That's where 2024 running back Stacey Gage is at, formerly at IMG, but he switched over to Wharton. You want me to keep rolling through him? Go ahead.
I want to ask you about Keeley because I noticed that name, and that was a surprise given that I hadn't really heard any connection with Penn State up to this point. And I know he's an uncommitted 5-star, and like you got to throw your hat in the ring. Is this something that they've had a relationship in the past, but it just never really went anywhere, and they're trying to reignite that, or is this maybe
for the most part? Yeah.
Okay.
For the most part, I haven't heard of anything. I've asked about him 3 or 4 times now since he decommitted. I think it was previously committed to Notre Dame, I believe it was. Yep. I don't see a whole lot coming from it. I think it's just kind of like the Noah Rogers stop, right? Like you know, this is an incredible talent. Noah Rogers seems pretty firm with his Ohio State commitment, where at least Keon Keeley is uncommitted, but it's just, it's a really talented player. You're going to be in the area.
Schools that are going to be after him, that we've, the On3 recruiting team that we have, that, the national team, they've been following his recruiting process, and all the names you'd expect are there. So I just was curious that Penn State was I shoot your shot, but when you have a limited amount of time and resources and all these things, that was one thing that kind of perked my attention. So it's interesting to see those decisions that you're making in light of the number of spots you have left, and you're trying to rekindle new recruitments and stuff like that. But it's just interesting little side note there. What are the other major takeaways from today? And then we'll get into a couple other topics.
Yeah, well, just one thing with Keeley too. He's a 5-star player, and defensive end is a massively important position. So you got to keep trying. I will say he's going to take his 3rd official visit this weekend to Alabama. He's already taken one to Notre Dame. Took one to Ohio State, I believe, the first week of the season. So he's got 2 left. Maybe Penn State can work something in there, but it's the chances are going to be pretty slim in my eyes. But we'll see. Maybe something will emerge there that I'm not seeing at the moment. So, but Ty Howe, he's going to be at the DeMatha Gonzaga game tonight. I think 2 programs Penn State fans should be pretty familiar with. DeMatha has a host of guys from Tavani Mazzell, 2024 running back, Emmett Laws, 2024 defensive tackle. And then they have a couple 2025 guys. Bud Coombs is a player I like a lot, and Nathan Owosu Boateng is a good-looking linebacker, kind of hybrid player. And, of course, Gonzaga then has Evan Link. Penn State's not trying to give up there. I mean, Ty Howe has some – Troutwine and Snyder were the majority of the guys recruiting Link, but Howe has a relationship there with him as well. Actually, excuse me, I should say it was Howe and Troutwine more than Snyder, I think, for Link. But either way, I mean, they're going to keep chipping away at Link. We'll see what happens. Howe also stopped by Friendship Collegiate Academy today. That's where 5-star defensive end Dylan Stewart's at. Dylan Stewart was just up here for the Ohio game a couple weeks ago. So keep chipping away there. Just 2 other notables here. Phil Troutwine is in Massachusetts today. Liam Andrews, we've talked about a good bit, 2024 offensive lineman. I have Liam as their number 1 interior guy for 2024. Phil pretty good there too. I think that's trending in the right direction for Penn State at the moment. Let's see if he gets back on campus for a game here at some point. With them playing the majority of their games on Saturdays up there in Massachusetts, it might be hard, but I could see him getting on campus maybe in November when their games are over. Gerby Lambert too. Sean and I talked about him on the Tuesday podcast. Really big 2024 offensive tackle prospect. He will stop by that school as well. And then just one other one I want to mention: Taylor Stubblefield and Taylor Stubblefield and Anthony Poindexter are checking up today on Cam Seldon. Of course, the Tennessee wide receiver commit that Penn State was very much in the mix with. We'll see what happens there. Taylor Stubblefield is then flying out to St. Louis tonight to watch Ryan Wingo, another 5-star wide receiver that I will have to check up on more. If he's flying out there, there must be some sort of a relationship there that I haven't dug up on a lot yet. So keep an eye on Wingo. Seldon, of course, they'll keep chipping away at, and those are the majority of the visits for today.
So check out BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Sign up for just $1 to get all the other names and all the other players and places and get the inside scoop on the Lions Den message board to hear the feedback of how all of this went from our recruiting insiders, Ryan Snyder, and of course, Sean Fitz. The next thing is a committed player for the class of 2023 that we've, I think, both said is a very good football player, kind of came out of nowhere, discussing his recruitment of Zion Tracy. You got a little bit more context, a little more information from his current coach at St. Thomas More. So what was that conversation like, and what did you learn about Tracy that you didn't know before?
I caught up with Ernest Anderson. He's the head coach at St. Thomas More. Really, we just asked a lot about how he ended up at St. Thomas More, originally from, Long Island Lutheran in, Long Island, obviously. I would say what I learned most from that interview. Well, one thing I learned is that he's not really playing a lot of defensive back at St. Thomas More. He's playing mainly wide receiver there. Zion has always kind of been a wide receiver, but Penn State loves his long arms, loves his athleticism, and they think he projects best. Coach Anderson was mainly saying that he's just a better weapon for them at offense more than defense because of it, just the way their roster is. They have talented guys for defense. They don't have as many talented guys for wide receivers. So he just kind of fits best there at the moment. Learned a lot about how he ended up there. Like I said, really just kind of a friend of a friend kind of put Anderson onto Zion and kept an eye on him. And, he talked a little bit about the what happened with Temple. And, Syracuse came in late for Zion last year. That I didn't know about. I guess Syracuse was down to Zion and one other player late last year before the final signing period. And but Penn State, I won't say Penn State got lucky, but Syracuse ended up taking another player, or Zion probably would have ended up at Syracuse last year. So learned a little bit about that. A lot of positive things as far as, where Zion, the first impressions Zion has made since he's been there, just about the kind of athlete he is. He talked a lot about, Zion probably being the best athlete he's ever had there. If you follow St. Thomas More, they've had a ton of talented players over the years. Of course, Tyler Rudolph went there, and there's a ton of other guys too. But I think those were kind of the main things. He talked really positive about Terry Smith. I mean, we see that all the time, right? About just how of a honest, straight up guy Terry is, and that's kind of what wins his recruitments more often than not. We talked. Well, I guess one other thing I learned is we were talking about the camp scene, and we've talked a lot, T. Frank, about how him going up against Johnny Shakir was a big reason why he ended up at Penn State. We knew Penn State liked him as a player, but none of us really had Zion as like this is a player we got to watch because he might end up here the night of that camp. Well, one other thing I learned too is that when he went to the Rutgers camp this year, Yazid Haynes, of course, was previously committed to Rutgers. When he went to that camp, he had a great performance against Yazid Haynes as well, who, of course, ended up at Georgia. So it wasn't just Johnny that he had an awesome standout performance with from a camp scene. He did it against Yazid up at Rutgers as well. But I'd say those were kind of the main takeaways. I don't want to go into everything because I want fans, of course, to be able to read it. But, just an honest assessment from his coach, and obviously a lot of positive things to say. I mean, he made it clear that those long arms and his athleticism works out really well at corner. It's just for their team purposes, wide receiver makes the most sense for them at the moment. But that was interesting to me because I was hoping to get some DB film, and we will. He did say that when he did play when they play IMG and when they play St. Francis, he's probably going to play a lot more defensive back. They do play IMG tonight, so. If you guys want to watch that game should be somewhere on YouTube. I believe IMG has most of their games streamed, so you can probably
as long as they're not on ESPN, they end up on YouTube, from what I can tell.
Yeah,
and that's great because I have been very frustrated. There's not a T. Frank's film room on Zion Tracy because there's no film on Zion Tracy. There's absolutely nothing out there, especially from St. Thomas More, and I have looked every week this season. But that'll be exciting to see him tonight against some of the nation's best high school football players, and we'll keep track of that as well. The arm length, to me, that was the one thing that he kept harping on and that I saw immediately on film is, the weaponry he has with length and speed. That is the building blocks of a great football player. And whether it's receiver or corner, corner, obviously there's reasons for having length and needing length, but you don't want a receiver with short arms either. We are not short on talent here on the BWI Daily Edition because Ryan Snyder is filling 2 roles for us on Fridays. All that recruiting information, 20 minutes of recruiting information, just a giant cylinder full of delicious information. Now we're going on to Ryan Snyder's best bets.
I think this is going to be one of the best seasons Toledo's ever had. We'll do the official play will be -7.5 first half. Degenerate in me sometimes watches a little Hawaii, Stanford. I'll lay 12 with Stanford. Vanderbilt stinks. I had them last week against Notre Dame. That was a winner.
So let's get into the games this week, Ryan.
I'll never not laugh. It makes me want to go clubbing in like Monaco.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, that's what you bring us, Ryan. The upward trajectory in our lives where we can afford to go clubbing in Monaco or own a yacht. So how did we do last week? I trust you to keep track of these things. Okay.
2-2. Yeah, 2-2 last week. So 6-8 on the season. We gotta get that back to 500. We're 47-36 all time. So still doing fine all time. Off to kind of a mediocre start this year. I only picked 4 games last week. I try and do 5 each week. Since I only picked 4, we're going with 6 this week for best bets. I'll just roll kind of right into it. The UNLV San Jose State game is a Friday night game. Kind of threw it in there. What's your appetite? Coming back from a late night dinner, maybe a few drinks. It's a 10:30 start. The old 10:30 CBS network degenerate play, as I like to call it. I'm going with San Jose State here. They're -6 against UNLV. Just a couple things. I mean, I really like Kaveion Cordero. I think he's a very underrated quarterback. I've watched him play twice now. Really just love his game. He really makes smart decisions, completing 60% of his passes, no interceptions, substantially over a couple hundred over 1,000 yards this year. And just a true dual threat guy. I mean, I don't want to call him an electric player. He's not like a Mike Vick or anything like that, but I just really enjoy watching him. I think he's going to be the best player on the field tonight. UNLV is 4-1. Both of these teams have a solid record. I think they're both 4-1 on the year. But UNLV, just the way they've won their games and who they've played, I think is just not very good. I mean, for example, last week in the second half, they were losing to New Mexico. I think they've had, I was reading it, what was it earlier? I think it was 8 turnovers in the last 2 games in their favor, So
wow.
Just getting they're capitalizing for other teams' mistakes, and that's great. But the other teams they played are Idaho State, North Texas, Utah State, and New Mexico. And then they played one other team where they lost to, a quality Power 5 program. But their 4 wins are against a bunch of nobodies. Not that San Jose State has a bunch of quality wins. I mean, they did beat Wyoming, and I think Wyoming has wins over Air Force and Tulsa. So, I mean, that's not too bad. And they played Auburn tough, and I know Auburn isn't some elite juggernaut this year, but they only lost to Auburn by 1 score. I think you watched some of that game. Of course, it was the week before Penn State. I remember watching a little bit of it. Just I saw some positive things there. So I like San Jose State at home. This spread was originally like -3.5, -4. So I'm a little worried that I got on it a little too late. I like to always be on the right side of that and not be taking points or not be taking favorites when the spread has jumped a good bit. But I think we're still on the right side. As long as you get this under a touchdown, I like it. Give me San Jose State -6.
So then we got next game, a Big Ten matchup of Purdue, and they are at Maryland. So Maryland, the favorite here. What are you seeing with the Terps and the Boilermakers?
Give me the over 58. I just look, if
it's a good bet.
If Penn State and Purdue were 35-31, like that was the final score. Watch this game. Like, I feel like this over should be like closer to 65. I don't, at least a little bit higher than this. I mean, first off, Purdue has scored in like the mid-20s almost every game this year. They scored 20 last week against Minnesota, and then every other game has been in the 20s or 30s. Maryland has scored 27 points in every single game, at least 27 points in every single game. That includes 27 against Michigan, who has a quality defense there. And just like I said, I mean, I think there's 2 great quarterbacks in this game. I think Tagovailoa is a quality quarterback. I think we know Aiden Connell is a quality quarterback. I just don't see any reason why, again, if Penn State and Purdue were 35-31, Penn State has a better defense and probably not as quality. I mean, I think their offense is probably comparable to Maryland right now. Maybe they're a little bit better on the ground, but I mean, like I said, Tagovailoa is a quality quarterback. I like the over in this. I think 58 is a little bit too low. I see this kind of like maybe a 38-31 kind of game. I feel pretty good about that bet. So give me the over of 58.
Yeah, I think that's a smart bet. I'm on board with that one. Virginia Tech, and I always love when you know something about the quarterback is when you feel good, right? And I feel like we know a lot about these two quarterbacks. Virginia Tech at Pitt. Virginia Tech getting 14.5 on the road with the Panthers. So what's got your interest in this game other than Brent Pry?
This is another over for me. The over-under is 41.5. Okay. And yeah, Virginia Tech's offense is not good. But I mean, if Virginia Tech gets to 14 in this game, like I feel pretty confident that this is going over. I mean, so this is a couple things here. One, Pitt has gone over this number in every single one of its games so far. That grabs my attention because I feel like Pitt should dictate this game. Yes, Virginia Tech's offense is bad, but because their defense is now struggling too. Brent Pry has some serious work on his hands there. I mean, they allowed 33 points to West Virginia 2 weeks ago. Now they allowed 41 points. I mean, they allowed 41 points to UNC alone last week. Yeah. Okay. And this over-under is 41.5. It just
they were not good in the Old Dominion game. You know, the one that I saw, were, and it was a lot of mental mistakes too, which I was rather surprised by that there's not more discipline. But you know, it's first season in a new defense, but still that was a bit of a surprise. You're right.
But Pitt's coming off of Georgia Tech upset last week, so they should be, they got a rebound here. I mean, I feel like Pitt should get to 30, and if you're telling me that Virginia Tech just has to get like 10 or so points in this game, I'll take that all day. This number feels like it should be, 45-ish, maybe a little bit over that. So I just feel like it's too low of a number. I'll take over 41.5 in the Vatech picking.
All right, TCU a favorite on the road at Kansas. You have been picking against Kansas for most of the year, right? Are we still on that train?
Hell no, we are. Hell yeah, we're on that train. We are. Kansas is going to lose at some point. They should have lost. They should have lost against Iowa State last week. Iowa State Matt Campbell kept shooting himself in the foot, and the kicker. I mean, I think when the freshman kicker missed 3 kicks last week, maybe 4 kicks, something like that. I mean. That should have been a winner for me last week. We should have been 3-1, but I say that every week, right? So, all right, but a couple things. Max Duggan, guys, is for real. And I just talked last week or 2 weeks ago when I took TCU over SMU. I've never been a massive Max Duggan fan, but the guy is crushing it right now. Completing 75% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. But really, it's TCU's ground game that's like standing out to me the most. Keandre Miller, Amari DiMaccardo, I believe his name is, averaging 7.6 yards per carry, the two of them. I mean, TCU has more runs over 30 yards. I believe it has more 30-yard or plus runs than any other team in the country right now. So they're getting a lot of explosive plays.
A lot of big plays.
They've played some quality teams. They're averaging 8.3 yards per play. I think that's including passing. So that's another quality stat there. There's just a lot of things here that
they blew out Oklahoma, right? Like
they destroyed Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, by the way, is entirely overrated. I watched one of their games. Their offense is bad. Like, it's not just that the players, the schemes are bad. And this is always my concern when you hire a defensive-minded coach is what is their philosophy on offense? Because offense is so important. It is, a lot of people say you start with defense. Defense wins championships. But the objective of football is not to stop the other team. The objective, the basis of football is to score points and then prevent the other team. Because you can't win if you don't score any points. And I'm a mini rant here, but I'm sure Brent Venables has time to change things and get his house in order. But just the gimmickiness of that Oklahoma offense and how it clearly was the brainchild of somebody who has defensive minded things. Fade Oklahoma. That is my assessment of what I saw of them. But your thought in this game, get back to what you have to say.
I do like Texas too. I didn't have that in best bets, but I did look at Texas a good bit because that there's the Red River shootout or rivalry, I guess, but it's really the shootout. Let's call it the shootout. Okay, so a couple other things with TCU. I've actually did my research on this game. They've scored 29. They've scored 29 on 49 of their offensive drives this year, guys. That's pretty damn good. I think it's like 60, almost 60% or so. And 27 of those have been touchdowns. Another impressive stat there. But here's the kicker, though. last week, Jalen Daniels, Kansas quarterback, doing really well, but he struggled against Iowa State, who was a 3-3-5 stack defense.
Yep.
So does TCU. TCU has better players too. I think Jalen Daniels was something like 7 of 14, 93 yards passing, had 9 yards rushing. There's so many things that stack up in TCU's favor. Oh, by the way, TCU is the best team in the country right now at not allowing explosive plays on defense. And yes, Oklahoma and SMU are gimmicky, but I mean, they still played SMU and Oklahoma, and they're the best team in the country statistically at allowing explosive plays. Yes,
yeah.
I agree with you. Oklahoma's not great, but they still can produce some explosive plays. Same with SMU. So and that just stands out to me. But yeah, just the moral of the story here is Kansas State's going to lose at some point. They're going to get, I'm not going to say blown out, but they're going to get beat up pretty good at some point here. I thought it would be last week. I'm doubling down, tripling down, whatever you want to call it. TCU -6. Let's go.
All right. You're gonna be right one of these weeks. So about Kansas.
Now that or they're going to the national championship, and then I'm gonna pound them to lose in the national championship if they do. But go on.
I believe they call that a sunk cost. Auburn at Georgia, a massive 30-point spread here. What do we do?
What do you think I'm taking in this one?
You're not going to take Georgia to cover, are you?
No, I'm taking the points.
Okay.
I'm taking the points. I mean, look, Georgia's going to blow up one of these weeks. Obviously they've had a bad week against Missouri. Not a bad week, but they won by like 4 points or so. Yeah. Penn State, I think they only won by like 17 or so. They're not clicking on all cylinders at the moment. But I mean, 30 points, guys, is a crazy number in an SEC versus SEC kind of game. There was, I want to give credit. Who did I see the stat from? I think it was on ESPN. I think it was the Bear and Stanford Steve. They do like a gambling pick thing every week. So I want to make sure I give them credit. But I think the Bear did a stat where it was in 30-point spread games in the SEC over the year. The favorite is 6-12 against the spread. So that stands out to me. And then Georgia's played in 5 of those games, and they're 1-4 against the spread. So 30, they just don't really cover in these high spread kind of games. And that's really all it is. I just think this is a crazy number. Maybe Georgia will just come alive this week and destroy Auburn. But hey, Auburn played well against LSU last week. That was actually a game I bet in real life. I had Auburn. I didn't have him in best bets, but I did play Auburn last week, and I felt good about that game. then they almost blew it at the end there with LSU. I thought LSU might sneak in a backdoor cover. Fortunately, they didn't. But I thought Auburn played well. They kind of gave up in the second half, and that is what worries me in this one is, will they stick around the first half and then just let Georgia destroy them, similar to how Penn State did in that third quarter. But whenever I'm getting an SEC team, this is a rivalry game too. Whenever I'm getting in these situations, you're going to give me 30 points. How can I not take it?
A huge spread, Auburn at Georgia. And now for our de facto game of the week.
Right.
Because there's no Penn State game. Texas A&M at Alabama. Another giant spread in the SEC. So what do you see here?
Oh, all the opposite. This is Nick Saban all day, baby. I mean, you guys know, anyone who's reading this should know what happened this past year with Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher and all the war, the war of words they had about NIL and all that kind of stuff. Look, I still feel good about this, even if the freaking Heisman Trophy winner doesn't play in this game. So a couple things here. One, let's just look at some stats here. Nick Saban in a revenge game, so playing a team that he lost to last year. There's been 15 teams that have beaten him since he's been in Alabama. When playing them the next year, he's 11-4 against the spread. In spreads of 10 or more points, which is obviously this is 23.5, so this is a lot bigger. He's perfect 6-0. So whenever he gets in these situations in a revenge spot, he doesn't call off the dogs. I mean, they keep piling it on in the third and fourth quarter, and I expect them to keep piling it on and on and on in this one. I can go through a bunch of other stats if you want, but I just think Texas A&M sucks, and Alabama has every reason in the world to just destroy them. I mean, one thing I will say is Haynes King, the quarterback for A&M. So here's the stats for the games he's played in so far this year. Sam Houston State, he had 2 interceptions. Against App State, he was 13-20 for 97 yards. Not very good. Mississippi State, 6 of 13, 49 yards and 2 interceptions last week. And now he's going to go against Will Anderson and Alabama. I mean, how are they going to score? I don't understand how they're going to score. The other play is to take the team total under Texas A&M in this one. I think it's at like 10, and I don't think they're going to get 10. Texas A&M's offense has not been able to do anything all year. Their defensive line are all young kids who are getting pushed around all the time. That's going to continue in this one. Yeah, even if Jalen Milroe does play, I think they'll be okay because they can run the ball all day on A&M. A&M is 111th in the country in rushing success rate for defense. I mean, teams are just gashing them all over the place. Give me Alabama. This is the other key thing too, is the spread now is at 24 and a half. I did get it at 23 and a half. So I'm cheating here a little bit because I don't think you're going to get 23 and a half. I bet this yesterday, to be honest with you. But I bet at 23 and a half. So we're taking it 23 and a half. But if you're betting now, it's probably going to be at 24. Definitely search around. You can find 24. Get that over 24 and a half. No doubt.
So just before we get out of here on the BWI Daily Edition, quickly run down our bets through the 6 games you picked this week.
Yeah. All right, give me San Jose State -6. I just think UNLV is a paper tiger. They have a good record, but they've played absolutely nobody. Purdue, Maryland over 58. I just think they're two good quality quarterbacks. There's no reason that both these teams can't score in the high 20s, low 30s. They should be able to get over that number. Virginia Tech Pitt, give me over 41.5. Again, 41.5 is a low number in college football. I don't see why Pitt can't get in the 30s. If Virginia Tech can get me 10 points, we should cover this game. I like that. TCU -6. Kansas is just, their time has come. They had a great run. They're going to face their first quality team. There's so many stats that are in TCU's favor for this one. Give me TCU -6. Auburn +30. Rivalry game in the SEC. These favorites with 30 points or more in the SEC rarely cover. That's really all it is for me. It's too many points. I'm going to try it. Let's see what happens. And then Texas A&M Alabama -23.5 versus Texas A&M. Every reason in the world to expect Nick Saban to keep piling on points in the fourth quarter.
You want to do this again next week?
Let's see. What do I got going on next week? I only have to go to Lancaster next week. So, next Friday is great. I don't got to do a 2.5-hour drive. So, one way, really 5 hours if you think about it. So, next week, all in, buddy. Michigan next week, too. By the way, that spread opened at 10. At 10. Penn State getting 10 against Michigan. You guys missed it already. It's already down to like 8, 7.5. All the sharp bettors out there pounded Penn State at +10 on DraftKings yesterday. So if you find anything that's Penn State +8, +9, +10, absolutely bet it because there's no way that game. I think that game's like a 6 in my opinion. Michigan certainly deserves to be a favorite. I don't know about a touchdown favorite, but I think that's where it's going to end. I think it's going to end at like 6.5, 7. So if you can get Penn State over a touchdown, I'd play it now because I don't see it staying there.
A freebie right there from Ryan Snyder on Best Bets.
Oh, we're definitely betting Penn State next week, which is probably I'm losing every Penn State bet, so maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'll do the reverse jinx next week to keep everybody happy.
All right, that'll do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. We will be back on Monday, Michigan game week, the first day of the rest of Penn State's life for the second half of the season. We'll have a live show, 8 p.m. preview of all of that stuff. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We will talk to you then.